Well, as I mentioned, it was late on Friday afternoon when we first heard of this story, with the Optus CEO Stephen Roux stepping up to a press conference to announce a serious mistake from the telco. A routine update to a firewall system had blocked access for Optus customers to 000. It impacted customers in South Australia, Western Australia and the Northern Territory, as well as a small number of New South Wales customers near the South Australian border. And that outage, as we know, has led to 4 deaths when people who needed the help of our emergency services couldn't get through. It's the latest in a long line of problems for Optus, and it could see Stephen Roux lose his job. It should see him lose his job. The timing is especially bad, with Mr Roux having spoken at the recent Financial Review Cyber Summit, saying Optus had learned important lessons off the back of its devastating national outage of 2023. Clearly that, well, it's not the case. So to find out what we should be doing to protect Australians from failures like this, I'm joined by the Shadow Communications Minister, Melissa McIntosh. She's on the line with me now. Melissa, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I think first and foremost, Melissa, we need to spare a thought for these families who are mourning loved ones. This should never have happened in the first place.
It is an absolute disgraceful failure by Optus on every single account. As you said, there's sadly 4 lives that have been lost and a whole lot of miscommunication and unanswered questions along the way. Even today, the Communications Minister stood up with ACMA and couldn't answer questions around when her department and ACMA actually found out, which appears to be on Thursday. But she didn't know until Friday afternoon. So the whole process has been a complete disaster.
It's not good enough, is it, Melissa, when we wait 21 hours for the CEO to front a press conference? I just said, ironically, on a Friday night when a lot of people have switched off and want to go out there and enjoy their weekends. I don't think it's too much for us to ask as consumers to be told and to be upfront and honest from those who run these companies.
That's right. Australians have a lot of questions. I don't think those questions are being answered right now, and you'd think that would be the top priority of both the government, the regulator and Optus to get together, have an independent inquiry, a proper investigation, not by ACMA, because it seems like ACMA found out about this before Friday. So we need this to be a proper, thorough investigation, including into why our most vital service, essential service of 000 is an offshore call centre.
Should the CEO resign, Stephen Roux?
I think most right-minded Australians are calling for his head today.
Well, let's look at the knock-on effect of this, because we've been through it only a couple of years ago. There were financial penalties levelled at Optus. I think there's a genuine discussion that needs to be had around Singtel, which is the owner of Optus, because clearly, Melissa, they just keep wiping their hands of this, and the only people to sort of, be affected by this are the CEO, formerly Ms. Ros Marin and now Mr. Roux, who will probably lose his job. At what point does the government need to step in and say, enough of these financial penalties, we need to do something more? And if so, what more can they do, Melissa?
That's right. A $12 million fine obviously barely scratched the surface. We need to ensure, and every Australian, we're approaching bushfire season, every single Australian should, as you rightly said, have that confidence if they need to call 000 that they're going to get through. And this isn't just about Optus. Any telecommunications provider should be giving confidence to every single Australian, no matter where you are in this country, that you can call 000 and get a response. So something more needs to be done. It needs to be more than just the fines. Obviously, Optus hasn't met all of the recommendations from the review, so it's gone past review phase. We've had review after review, and we need this government to be really strong. It'll be backed by the coalition, but what I'm calling for right now is an independent investigation, not by ACMA. Something stronger than that needs to happen.
When we talk about financial penalties, Melissa, I mean, you've been around long enough to know what happens. Companies are fined, and then it's the customers who are the ones who end up having to, pick up the tabs for the incompetence of these companies. Are financial penalties enough?
It is clear by what happened last week that financial penalties are not enough. Something more needs to be done. Perhaps the CEO will resign. But what else can we look into around the responsibilities of these big companies that have a lot of money, They're letting their customers down. But not only that, right now we've seen that 4 people have sadly passed away. That is bad. Every single Australian should be really in an uproar, real uproar about what's going on. And every single telecommunications provider needs to guarantee Australians that at the very least they can get that 000 service, and we want the government to make sure they're pulling every single lever they can to sort this out so it never, ever happens again.
I get a lot of people writing to me, Melissa, saying, well, why isn't there a threat of jail time? I mean, we're talking about people who have lost their lives through the incompetence of a company. Is that something you'd back, jail time for businesses like Optus that fail Australians like they have done over the last few days?
Let's look at every single option right now. Potentially, if there are individuals at fault, we need to ensure that every single option, that's why I'm calling for a thorough investigation, not by the regulator.
Is it time for the government too to sit down with the Singaporean owners of Optus and have a legitimate conversation? I know there's a couple of Australians on the board. There's Gail Kelly, a former CEO of one of the major banks. There's another Australian gentleman on the board. Should the government be sitting down and having a conversation with the owners of Optus?
Of course they should be. That should be a number one priority. How about the number one priority above that be protecting Australians? And they've failed. Optus has failed at that. So every single person involved in this should be at the table with the government, coming up with a solution that ensures this never happens again.